these samples actually come back the day of, and we're running them the same day that they were collected. Some things have different holding times. Bacteria, we don't mess around with. As soon as we collect it, bring it right back to the lab, and we're checking that right away. Here is a picture of our granular activated carbon vessels. This is pretty much our main filtration. It removes most of the contaminants that we do have. Each one of these holds like 20,000 pounds of carbon. 1 teaspoon, I think, has the same surface area as a football field. So it's just, they're very absorptive, I should say. They'll pull in any contaminants that go through them, and any well fields that we realize we have contamination in, we install these, and they filter out, most of the contaminants. What's nice is that these do filter out the forever chemicals. So we've been watching for them since 2013. By chance, they were removing them, which was very nice. And once the regulation happened, we had our filtration systems mostly at these well fields. So it was a nice, it worked out for us, I should say. On our website, if you need to, or if you want to know all of our testing that we do, this is a great resource. Not a lot of people, I think, know about it, but you can go on there and you can find out. You can even put your address in, and it'll let you know all the testing we've done in your area on the treated water that's going to your house. It'll give you high levels. Most importantly, it will give you the average. That's what everybody should really be concentrating on. And it'll let you know how many tests we did for a specific contaminant. It's got everything on there. It could be a little overwhelming, but if you know what you want to look for, you can go on there and find out right away kind of what is being served to you. There's also another link on there that'll let you know what our raw water is. So if you're curious as to know in your area what type of contaminants are in your groundwater and what we're filtering out, you can even find that data. The CCR, the Consumer Confidence Report, it's pretty important. And like I said, you can exactly find out what you're drinking throughout the year. You can put, it's interactive, you put your address in and bring it right to it, let you know what pressure zone you're in, and you can find out from there. Our emerging contaminants. This is kind of the new things on our radar. These forever chemicals, 1,4-dioxane. Like I said before, the GAC, granular activated carbon filters, they filter out the PFAS. We got to closely monitor them for any breakthrough. Breakthrough when the carbon gets saturated with a specific contaminant, and we start to see trace levels of it coming on the effluent. That's when we require that the well comes out of service. We got to change the carbon before we can serve it again. But this is a great link on our website. It kind of keeps you up to date on what's going on with these emerging contaminants. Another one is 1,4-dioxane. That's a contaminant that doesn't. The granular activated carbon filters, they do not do the greatest job removing that. We get quick breakthrough, it'll saturate, and it'll break through. So we had to develop AOP filtration, just a big UV reactor. We introduced some peroxide to the water. The UV light create a hydroxyl radical, breaks down 1,4-dioxane, which is great. We're installing quite a few of them this year, more next year. Our deferral for that ran out in August, so we can't serve anything above 1 part per billion right now. So it's a big undertaking that we're doing. A lot of our funding is going towards these AOP reactors, but it's all for public benefit. So it's good that we're putting them in. It's a great way to remove this contaminant. And we've been testing for that, I think, since 2003. So it's we kind of know where it is, what we have to do.
And before we kick back, yes, does anybody have any questions for Gavin? I mean, generally about water quality, it's obviously a critical.
Yes.
Hi, Gavin. I don't know if you're the right person to ask, but I'm gonna ask anyway. My name is Margaret Friedlander. I'm actually running for Southampton Town Trustee. So this is particularly interesting to me, and I'm starting to educate myself more. I live in Hampton Bays. And in Hampton Bays, we have a Class 2 Superfund site, which is in our fire department district. And a gentleman from the DEC came by and spoke to our civic association on Monday, and kind of gave a, he's not the project manager, so he could answer very granular specific questions, but it's dealing with PFAS and PFOA and all of that. And my understanding of the status of the situation is the report or the finding announcement went out in 2019. So we've got the good news that for this gentleman on the DEC said he was aware, at least in this instance, where the source was, because a lot of times that's a challenge. So we know it was caused from the materials used by the fire department to extinguish fires. My understanding is the wells are being monitored, most of them are capped. To your point, there's carbon filters, et cetera, et cetera. I'm assuming you're aware of this particular site?
Yeah.
And the gentleman from the DEC said that, because it's been going on since 2019 and probably before, obviously, but that's when the report came out, that a mitigation plan would be in place before the close of this year. And then it would be up to, the what's the word I'm looking for? The person, the entity that caused the contamination. Now, where do you guys fit in terms of working together? So once the DEC has a mitigation plan, where do you come in? How does our Hampton Bays Water District come in? And then I believe I'm gonna assume there's gonna be a lawsuit with whoever created the chemicals that caused this issue. So can you just kind of help me understand how you segment roles and responsibilities and how this comes together to actually have an actionable plan?
Yes, so it's very good, DZ, they do work with us, that we find about these Superfund sites, that's kind of when we will really start testing our water to the highest frequency, we give them all of our data, they'll come for us, so we're constantly letting them know what we're finding in our groundwater so that they can proceed with litigation. We'll certainly be a part of that, when the litigation does happen. So we do work closely with them, but our role generally is just to supply them with the data that we're getting, yes, so. But it all works well together, yes.
Tom Metcalf, I'm a resident of Westhampton.
Thank you.
We have a situation in Westhampton where there's a closed sand mine off of Old Country Road in the vicinity of our transfer station. And they're proposing to the DEC for a permit for C&D, concrete and demolition to come in. The pit was dug down to groundwater. And then it was filled in with some concrete blend, maybe a couple of feet, but it's still 30-some feet deep. And it's a quarter of a mile from wells that you have near Suffolk County Police. You have a water tower there, and you have wells by Sophia Court. Is the Suffolk County Water Authority proactive against proposals like this that could be future pollution to the groundwater?
I mean, to be honest with you, we are part of the CEQA process, correct, right? We typically are part of that when different projects are going on. I know that the Old Country Road area in Westhampton, there was some PFAS, concern over there that we've been discussing with the county health department. And actually, I was just discussing with legislator funding before. The water authority did receive some funding to connect people who are on private wells still in that area. And we're actually still looking for some more funding from the federal government. We haven't heard back yet. Let's try and fund anybody who's in that area that might have, potential contamination. We're not a government entity, so we don't typically have say in, except for through the secret process and what's going on there. But we do work with our government partners, right? We're regulated by the county health department. We work with the East End. I don't really have a more full answer for you right now, but I can definitely circle back with you on that. I don't have a ton of information except what I just told you.
Okay, and my son has a home in
Sure.
the city of Old Country Road. It's 2 Gray Avenue.
Okay,
And
it honestly might be one of the areas, if he's on a private well, that we're looking.
he's on a
at.
private well,
Sure,
and there are test wells up in that area.
sure,
And the county was supplying him with bottled water,
sure.
so many gallons a week per resident in the
Sure.
home, and for other homes in that city. Then all of a sudden they stopped. He says, no, it's good enough.
All right, well, do you know, and we can have another conversation about this too, but do you know if his well's been tested either by the county or by anybody recently either?
Yeah.
Okay. But I guess the question is, how recently, I mean, it's possible, I guess, maybe if it's been tested and they feel like, I honestly don't know specifically for your situation. But like, we can tell you, one, if it's in the vicinity of the area that we want to connect people. And the grant money that we're getting is, to try and, remove some of the onus off of the homeowner, because at the end of the day, they have a private well, they're not going to contaminate it. So why should they have to bear, a lot of the cost? So we're trying our best to connect people in areas where there's contamination, with as little cost as possible by working with our government partners.
I have, and I know people trust Suffolk County Water because
Sure.
I have an outside frost valve, and
Okay.
some of the residents of Columbia Avenue
Hmm.
come to my house to get water.
Sure.
Bring their own plastic jugs because they don't want to buy it,
Right.
and they fill it up from my Suffolk County Water hookup.
Sure. So at the sign-in table is actually my business card. So for you, definitely grab it and give me a ring and we can clarify if it's within that area. I think it is, because I've looked at that list many times. And if anybody has any additional questions as we're going through, if you don't get to answer or you feel like you want additional answers, please feel free to take that. But good question. Yes, sure.
Pertaining to the same project with the DEC. I'm just concerned about any future contamination. I know that DEC has a, a protocol set in place. But what I would like to have is a backup. Does the Suffolk County Water Authority have any mechanism in it to periodically test the water over the years as this project is going on? Because I know a lot of times what happens is everyone starts out with good intentions and then things lapse.
Right.
So I'm concerned that, after a period of time, they're not going to watch. So
Right. I mean, to Gavin's point before though, right? So we are constantly testing people when there are lawsuits and other things going on. They come to us, Gavin, right, to get the data of raw water from a certain time. So like, we're open to giving that information to help along with things of that nature. So we are, we have those green test systems that you saw that woman testing from all over the county. So it's in areas where we have our water, it's in areas where there isn't our water. And honestly, the health department, then the county health department comes in and tests the water in the areas too, just because at the end of the day, we're a separate entity. They want to make sure everything we're doing is, is up to snuff as well. So we are constantly testing. But I guess more on that project, we have to talk a little bit further.
Yeah, I would like that. I also have a question about water conservation.
Okay,
Uh,
and we are going to be talking a bit about that after Gavin. But no,
one quick question.
yeah, sure.
As far as, I know that you try to educate the public about conserving water.
Sure.
My big concern is all the water that's going to water lawns. And
Sure.
I would like to see you guys to make a big effort of educating people that, make less lawn,
Sure,
water less.
sure.
The grass doesn't always have to stay green. There are varieties of grass you can plant that aren't so water hungry.
Sure.
I would
sure.
like to really see a big public push on that, because once our water's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, listen, we have one poster in here besides what we're showing on the presentation. It's talking about odd even, right? 95% of our customers are residential and they use 80% of the water that we pump. So, if every single person in this room, has irrigation on their house and they crank back each zone by 5 to 7 minutes, it's tens of thousands of gallons of water that you can save a week, hundreds of thousands of gallons, depending on how much we're pumping a year. So, this WaterTalk program has been going on for years. We recently started doing some more digital media, so you'll actually start seeing things about odd even. I was reading Tuesday on my phone the other day, and I got a blast ad about you should be watering odd even. We've been sending out robocalls for our customers to try and educate them. We've upped. Honestly, it's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to talk about, but we have been pushing harder. We've honestly been required by the DEC back about 7 or 8 years ago, and we recently had a new push. Honestly, as a part of what happened last summer, where it was hot and dry, the hottest dry it's been in 10 years, and we realized like we needed to do more. So we'll definitely go through some more of that, and then if you have anything additional you feel like we didn't mention, feel free. All right, pick out.
Pepper again, 2 questions. when you continue to monitor, when you find contaminants, you are saying you continue to monitor, how long does that monitoring go on?
It goes on, if we find a contaminant, it's probably not gonna be going anywhere, so we're constantly monitoring, so we'll continue, yeah. If we don't find a contaminant, we're also still monitoring, but so to your point, if, say we don't find PFAS in a particular well field, that doesn't mean we stop monitoring for it, we continue to monitor for it, because it could potentially get there, plume could come, the water can change, so we will keep checking for it, but as far as contamination, if it's there, we're probably gonna keep having it there, so we'll continue to monitor for it and filter for it, I should say, just like I said. Each well field, the chemist in there, you can give them the sample and they can probably identify it by what they're finding in it, so everyone's got their fingerprint. It doesn't change too much, unfortunately, if it's there, it's gonna be there, but just keep filtering for it.
So, in a broad question,
Yes.
if you were looking at the whole East End mold corpse, are there specific areas where you have identified more contaminants? Or is it sporadically placed, or are there like certain towns, certain areas where it's more?
Not specifically, there is areas that have kind of, we'll know South Shore, kind of a high iron area, we have most of our iron removal, say on the South Shore, but as far as PFAS. That's almost site specific, usually caused by something, we try to figure out who caused the contamination, but that's pretty site specific. So.
And that's the firefighting.
The firefighting folks,
That
exactly.
would be near.
Airports,
the airports.
yep, that's the big one, so.
Although in Sagaponic, we found perfluorinated compounds, and there was never really an understanding of specifically where it came from. It could have been
Right.
a homeowner many years ago spilled, you just don't know. There was a time when these perfluorinated compounds were used pretty extensively.
Right.
They were used in like food containers to keep them from leaking, Teflon, Scotch Guard. It seals off water and air, so that's why it's such a good firefighting foam, but that's why it's so resilient also.
Yeah.
But it was everywhere for a while, so.
And there are a lot of areas, not to cut you off, legislator, there are a lot of areas still that, the health department regulates, that we work with them on, that we still don't know why it's there. I mean, the easiest thing that people can do to not ever drink it is to get connected. And a majority of these areas, people aren't connected. The East End, the North and the South Fork are the areas that still have a good amount of people on private wells. There's about 15 to 20,000 people still on private wells. And depending on the area, we always push and try and get them to get their wells tested. Because at the end of the day, we're constantly testing the water that, you're drinking at this firehouse, you're drinking in your home if you're within our district. But if you don't get your well tested when you're on a private well, you don't know what you're drinking, and that's, a scary situation.
Is it true that these PFAS chemicals actually seek water and actually travel versus like stay sedentary in the ground? Because I read a couple places, not Wikipedia, but science-based sources, but I've never actually had an opportunity to ask the question. Is that true? Because in Hampton Bays, we're so close to, the Shinnecock and the canal and a lot of bodies of water. Would that be an accurate assumption about these chemicals?
I don't know that they necessarily seek it, they just don't break down, they don't absorb in soil, so they kind of just continuously working themselves until they get probably to the water. It's not like they're moving towards it, but they'll filter down, keep going because they're not breaking down pretty much until they get into a body of water.
Right. And also to the legislator's point, like it's in a lot of things that we typically use. I mean, it's getting less and less, but right, Teflon pans. I hate to say it, but microwave popcorn, most of that sealant is a lot of PFAS and things of that nature. Something that I stopped buying. Don't want to ingest that if I can. So the amount of things that PFAS was used for, and a lot of like water resistant things, like it's great to have pans that are water stain resistant, but it's possible they have this water coating on them. So all things to consider, just to be an educated consumer. The state and other governments are trying to regulate and get people to stop using them or to stop manufacturing them that way, but sadly, one day at a time.
Yeah, I live close by Westhampton Beach, and the last 18 months, I've noticed pink rain forming in the toilet around the sink more rapidly than it's ever done in the past. What is that, and is it dangerous? I have a follow-up question.
They believe that's from, it's a type of bacteria, Aeromonas, I believe, and I don't really know how to get rid of it. It's not in our drinking supply. It could be somewhere coming from your plumbing, that pink rain. So like the chlorine from our distribution system will kill that. But once it gets into the household plumbing, it could be, something that might be sitting in your hot water heater or somewhere, but that pink ring has been known to be caused by a specific type of bacteria.
And I know a number of folks in my area, without that conversation, they say, yeah, we have the same thing, so I don't know
Okay.
whether it's and I know they replaced a lot of piping in Westhampton Beach, water pipe, I don't know whether that was just for the fire hydrants and all that. There's a lot of work done over the last 18 months in that regard as well.
Okay.
So don't know what that pink ring is.
All the research I do, because people do bring that up a lot, it is a specific type of bacteria that they reference it to, but we're testing bacteria within our distribution system, we're testing for that chlorine residual. If we have chlorine there, the bacteria is not gonna grow, so, like I said, it might.
Okay, so Paulo, I use when it started using a, Berkey water filter for drinking water, so I use that in the home. Just because I don't want to use bottled water and all that, so I use a big Berkey system for my, I just refill it every morning. Are you recommending whole house filters at this point?
I don't recommend any filters, because, I have a family, I see all the testing we do. I know I drink the water, I have a 1-year-old, I've made this formula with it forever, but it's because I can kind of see it from the forefront. I'm proud of what I serve. So I would never recommend somebody go out and spend a large amount of money on filtration. We're testing above and beyond what we're required to do. Carbon filters is probably, like I said, if you want to add a little extra, you get carbon filters, it'll get rid of that chlorine taste if you don't like chlorine taste. But by the time we're getting it out to the public, it's been filtered of, the contaminants, I guess, well below what would require.
But as you said, there's stuff that occurs between when you provide water and it comes out my tap.
That is,
You gotta do your part. I believe you guys do your part. I just wonder what happens between.
yeah, it really should not be too much, like I said, it's in our distribution system a lot longer than it's, into your household plumbing. We are involved in a lead and copper testing where we go around and we see houses that say we're between 82 and 86 before the lead ban, and we'll test that water for lead to kind of see how our corrosion control is working, because our corrosion control should really prevent that by us adjusting the pH. Even if you have lead solder or lead pipes, it should really not leach into the water. So we're big on corrosion control. Bacteria is a differential.
Do you mind if I just make the point that if someone's on a private well, they can have their water tested by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services? They'll test the sample and may be able to tell you what the contaminant might be.
Absolutely.
And also, the benefit, sometimes, I know I go out and talk to people on private wells quite often. Sometimes there's many reasons why people want to be on a private well, right? Maybe they want to be off the grid. Maybe they feel like they've been using it for a long time and it's fine. But to get it tested actually helps you more than people realize, because even if you want to end up staying on it, getting it tested will, one, tell you if you have anything to be concerned about, and two, if there is anything to be concerned about, then you actually get, you possibly can get funding from the DEC or somewhere else to actually get you connected at a pretty low cost. Sometimes we have people who come and get tested, we see that there's a spike, and a lot of the time the DEC will actually pay us to connect them. So there's really no downside to getting tested through the health department, like the legislator said. And if you know anybody who's on a private well, or any of you are, feel free to circle back with us, because there's no downside to getting tested. Water is constantly moving, so it's always good to know what you're putting in your body. In person.
I came from Watermill because I'm looking for answers without something,
Okay,
but I don't know if this is the right.
well, that's okay. We can, if we don't know the answer, we can get it for you.
Okay. Is responsible for deciding where yellow hydrants are placed.
That's actually a very good question. I'm sorry to cut you off, but there's more to it.
Are there more to this?
Oh, no, I was saying, is there more to your question? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, there's going to be, and then decide who pays for the installation. And does the hydrant go down to just groundwater because it's mainly used for putting out fire? Or does it go into the aquifer?
Sure. So, when we install water main, say on this street, we actually coordinate with the fire department, because they're the fire professionals, to make decisions on where the hydrant should be. Because at the end of the day, we're great at filtering and cleaning water, but we're not great at necessarily knowing where they want hydrants to be in case of fire. So we do work with the fire departments.
So hydrants are not going to a water source, they're connecting to a pipe that's bringing water downstream.
Well, no, they are connected to the public water main, so it is drinking water basically that's being used to put out fires. Because we are the only water provider, it's not a separate well, it is connected to our water.
But I used to see red fire that I was told was fire well.
So there are fire wells on possibly some in Watermill, because I know there are some people out there that are still on private wells. It basically kind of looks like, not like a hydrant, but it looks like a hose, basically. So the fire departments, when they're out of those areas, if there's no hydrant, because there's no water main on the street, they literally have a pump that goes in and sucks the water out to fight the fire. So it's probably not the most effective way, right, to get pressure for them, but at the end of the day, some streets still aren't private wells and they don't have water, so that's the only option.
The question, who pays for installing the fire?
I believe the fire departments actually pay the water authority for well, I believe we install it, but the fire departments pay us a fee to operate them basically, or for the location.
Could I ask this question? In Watermill, there is a major development happening.
Sure.
Large buildings that are going to have 3 to 4 townhouses and some 2 million dollars.
Okay.
Those people who require the developers to put the fire hydrants in.
I mean, listen,
Buildings are quite close together.
sure,
They're near a shopping center.
right. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I mean, the developers typically come to us to get water main installed, or they'll typically come to us if they want water main installed, they'll pay a fee so that, those people can get connected. And then if there is going to be water main, typically the fire department will get involved to recommend, where hydrants should be, right? But since we are the water authority, and I know you came in a little bit late, we're a public benefit authority, so we can't necessarily require developers to do things of that nature. We do work with the local government, state and the county. But we'll bring water and hydrants to places that people would like, but we can't necessarily require developers to do things of that nature.
Require that legislator.
I don't know, to be honest with you, it might be either the town or the state level. I have to circle back on that. I don't want to see that turn.
Okay. Actually left Watermill.
Okay.
At 5 o'clock.
Sure, and you just got here.
Hour and a half.
Oh, geez.
There
Well, I'm
were
glad
2
you're-
accidents and 2 detours.
Okay.
I actually had to go up to a police car to get him.
Oh, gosh. Well,
She just said, follow me.
okay.
So you're the one getting the big escort?
So, they're saying, go to the town's government and require them.
Well, I would say
Legislation.
that's my estimate. I'll be honest, I don't 100% know. I can get back to you and find out. Like I said, to the person who's sitting behind you, Jen, in the beige top, if you have my business card, we can circle back with you if you call or email us and try and get you an answer.
Because it seems to me a developer should be responsible. He has to put in sidewalks, usually that.
Right.
He needs to require
Right.
landscaping. Why don't you?
Yeah, actually, I think legislator funding might be, she also worked in the town for a very long time, so she might be able to answer this question better than she.
Hi, Marlene.
I-
How are you? Nice to see you. When you came in, I'm like, oh, seriously, Marlene Harris, like she's far to go. I think we should check with the planning board, their site, I think the site plan probably includes requirements just like a sidewalk, but I don't know the answer and then big development. But I'd be happy to have we'll look into it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
The planning board sends plans to the fire districts. I'm a commissioner here in Westhampton Beach. And then they ask us for recommendations of where, a lot of times we look at, and there's a hydrant close enough to the project, so we have no recommendations. Other times we will put on the map where we would like the hydrant placed. And the district pays hydrant rental on each hydrant. You add hydrants, you pay more.
Sure.
And we also have wells. We have some wells here, but we don't really use many of them anymore. We're gonna be eliminating them because we have enough hydrants in the district.
Right. Thank you, appreciate that. Sir, did you?
Yes, I also walked away from my apologies.
That's okay.
I'm away here listening to the Zoom call,
That's okay.
so, indeed, John.
I'm John, this is Gavin.
John.
Gavin is the lad,
I think
yeah.
it's not the wrong guy. Actually, Dr. Pharmacy, I recently have, quit my job to actually help people and give them environmental toxins. One of the reasons I'm here is to see what's going on in Southern County, got myself a resident of Southern County, I live in Port Salonga.
Sure.
And quick question, I just want to first say thank you for being here. Second, for doing everything you can for us to have safe drinking water. But at the same time, there's one concern that Gavin brought up, that it's a safe water to drink. You even give it to your kids. But what are your thoughts on chlorine and chemicals? I'm not trying to push on the spot, but
The question we get asked a lot, so that's okay.
well, chlorine is could be very harmful, especially when people take hot showers. You ingest the chlorine, goes straight into your bloodstream, drinking, putting it in your food, cooking with it. So, and also the other question is on heavy metals. It's the lead. It's, you guys do pretty well at removing that stuff, but it hasn't been around, but I noticed on some reports that there's cadmium and chromium, which is a carcinogenic chemical. And then another question, there's chlorine interacts with organic things that are in pipes and causes another chemical to arise called trihalomethanes, THN. And THN is also a concern. And there's not much, unfortunately, you guys can do about it because it happens later on when it gets to the home. So you're recommended not to have any type of whole house filter or even for drinking purposes filter. So what is really your reasoning behind that?
Okay, so chlorine, as a whole, it's been around forever. We test for it throughout the drinking water system. We're actually allowed to put up to 4 parts per million within our drinking water system. We don't ever pump out more than 1.5, so we're well below what they're letting us, what they would let us. I mean, 4 parts is pretty much like pool water. So the EPA, the Department of Health, they give us our regulations. The levels that they give is well below any known, health effects on humans. So I think a lot of this stuff is a 1 in a million. They say if you drink 2 liters of water a day for 70 years, you'll have 1 in a million chance of getting an adverse effect from it. It's like, so they'll set their limits well below any known health effects. As far as the trihalomethanes, which that we do another testing, but we'll go to the farthest part away from our well field. So we're looking for the most time that water could have chlorine and any contaminants could have a chance to react with one another. We'll go to the farthest point and we do what we call disinfectant byproduct. So we go in here, we're looking for those trihalomethanes and the HAAs. So we know about them, again, we're checking from where we're putting the water in, plus right before it gets to the household. So even we're not only checking the ends of, say, runs of water, the long runs, we're also, there's about, I think, 100 sites within the distribution system that we check regularly for the THMs. So we're carefully monitoring all of that stuff. I think we're allowed 80 parts per billion of THMs. We don't get close to that, but we are aware of that, what you're bringing up, and we do monitor for that as well.
So there is an allowable amount that the government uses in EPA.
Yeah, THMs is 80.
But in your point of view, any allowable amount of chemical is really allowable.
You know, we're not epidemiologists, unfortunately, that we just, you know, they give us a limit that we can go to.
I only say that because in pharmacy school, we learned that every drug is a poison. It's just a small dosage that you're being given to a patient. That's why we have to be very careful when we do prescribe certain medication. So the same thing goes with chemicals, even a little bit of a chemical, it's still a poison, no matter how you want to put it out.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, like, you know, we're testing for ibuprofen, say in water, you know, we could have levels, you'll drink it for the rest of your life, you'll never have one dose of, say, you know, ibuprofen pill if you were to take it, you know, the sad part of this is you're gonna be exposed to a lot of these contaminants in much higher doses, say, than, you know, we're gonna be allowing in water, you know, like when he brings up the microwavable popcorn, you just got slammed with some PFAS, unfortunately, you know, and, you know, you'll drink water for forever and never kind of hit a level that you're gonna be exposed to outside of drinking water. Of course, we don't want it. It's great that they have such low regulations, like that's what we're here to do, because again, you don't want to get in the, you know, something that you're relying on, like such as water, you know, it shouldn't be there, we don't want it there, so we're gonna try to remove it, but the sad thing is we've been rolling around in it forever, you know.
Can't provide without water.
Exactly, so that we want as pure as possible, but
Yes, I'm asking you questions in hopes that you'll answer this question when someone asks you about water filtration for a whole house or point of view system that you may think about it in the future. And it's not my place, but I just wanted to bring that up because awareness is so important. Many people don't actually understand. I know we do is very important. And if you didn't do, our water would be even worse than it is today. So the awareness of pharmaceuticals and many other chemicals, you spoke about PFAS earlier, where maybe you did that. And yeah, it's great that you guys testing those, but it's also important because we as individuals, consumers of water in our homes, we can't really go and test every time what's in the water.
no, absolutely.
Not every day. So how do we protect ourselves just in case something happens, we won't even hear it right away. So how can we as consumers give that layer of protection going forward to ourselves and to our little kids, or babies that we made with anyone really, because any chemical is not good enough. If any chemical is not, it is a poison. And taking it little by little doses every day will cause some sort of harm. And the EPA may not see it that way because they do studies for maybe 10 years or 15 years, but they don't do long-term studies. They don't do studies over 100 years of what happens. They just don't, because it's money consuming. They don't need to do it, but it does cause diseases. There's a study on chlorine that causes epithelial tissue to rupture, and then people get cholesterol all and stuff, and then you take cholesterol medication. So the prevention of chemicals leads to prevention of health diseases, prevention of taking medications, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I will say, just to kind of wrap up your line of questioning, I mean, you're talking about being in pharmaceutical school, which, you know, kudos to you. You know, you're most likely thinking, you know, milligrams, milliliters, you know, we were actually talking, you probably heard on Zoom about, you know, parts per billion and trillion, right? Parts per trillion is 1 second in 32,000 years. So we are talking just like scope of scale, you know, significantly tinier than probably most of us can really even imagine. And I will say, thanks to the fact that we are you know, have a larger infrastructure, right? You know, Gavin mentioned at the beginning, we have about 600 wells. You know, during, you know, many parts of the year, if for some reason we see contamination in a well or in a well field, like we can shut the entire thing down. And due to the fact that we have water main throughout the county, can just redirect water to you and shut it down until everything is clean, so that nothing is actually literally ever getting to your house. So one positive side of being a larger water provider and having enough wells that, you know, we do have options to get you the cleanest water humanly possible. But good stuff, and thank you so much. Of course, if you have any additional questions, like I said, my card's on the table. Feel free to give us a call. Was there any other questions? We just want to go on to conservation. Let's give Gavin a rest and give him a round of applause. Thank you, everybody, for your great questions. I mean, looking, water quality is something that, is critical and that we all need to sit and think about, and we want to not have to stress about. All right, so now talking about water, to some of your point, and water conservation and what we can do, right? So, here we go. Why conservation, right? So this is a fun thing that I honestly just learned about a year ago. So although the earth seems covered in water, and can anybody guess what percentage of it is actually available for human use, right? We have 20%, less than 10, or 1. So if there's not that many people here, so let's see, raise your hand for A. Nobody's gonna be fooled by this, I'm sure. Raise your hand for B. There's so many people on Zoom raising their hand for B. And then, as you probably guessed, yes, it is less than 1%, which is a little scary. Actually, I believe the number is closer to 3, but 2% of it is frozen. So there's less than 1% of water that's available for human use. Now, when I found this fact out, I realized that, on Earth, there's quadrillions of gallons of water, right? It's a blue planet. But still understanding that is one of the reasons why we need conservation. And although the water cycle continuously returns water to Earth, it's not always returned to the same place, right? When the rainwater comes down, it will go back in the aquifer. When rain comes down your downspout to your house, it goes back in the aquifer. But when Dasani bottles water and sells it to you, you drink it, and that's not recharging, right? So we have to make sure that we can do things little by little to, save our water. So a couple of reasons why we should conserve water. These are actually some of the most important pieces. We recently did a survey of about 500 of our customers. And these are the reasons that really struck home, right? And honestly, I agree with all of them. We have a sufficient but not unlimited supply of groundwater. Preserving our sole source aquifer for future generations is critical, because at the end of the day, the Water Authority has been around here 70 years. But we want to make sure the water is around for, as long as humanly possible. Higher water usage actually means more SCWA infrastructure, which then eventually that cost gets passed along to customers. So by conserving more water, you will save on your future water bills, right? We're going to talk about this in a moment. We actually experienced peak water usage during May to August, which impacts pressure and emergency services, right? We haven't been in a situation where there's been a fire and we haven't had the water, to my understanding, to put the fire out. We don't ever want to get there, and that's why conservation is a critical piece. And then, conserving water at the end of the day does affect your wallet as well. It will make for a cheaper water bill. All right, so talking about water usage, right? So this is a fun slide that we love to use all the time. So during the winter, most likely in the times between November and March, realistically, we are looking at this blue line down here, which is we're pumping around between 25,000 and 50,000 gallons per minute to serve the customers during the winter. When we get to the summer, which obviously we are on August 2nd, we are pumping closer to 10 times that amount, almost 500,000 gallons per minute, which is a ton of water. And as you can see, there are other examples here as well. Rainy summer day, we still do have some peaks. During weekdays, we have some ebbs and flows, but realistically, this is what's happening during the summer for us, and this is why we need conservation. A lot of the time, this is Monday morning, Wednesday morning, and Friday, because people just tend to have their irrigation running at that time. But the major reason for this jump, right, is your irrigation. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, or as it says here, the irrigation situation. So what are things that you can do to help with your seasonal water use? You'll actually see on the table when you walked in, there's a pamphlet from the EPA that we like to give out, which is about inspecting your system to save water. The EPA and the Irrigation Association recommends getting your system checked every 3 to 4 years, because at the end of the day, you might know if your sprinkler head is broken. I personally did a silly thing, ran over my sprinkler head. I haven't turned that one on, obviously. But you don't necessarily know if somebody stepped on a line and you're leaking into the ground until you see maybe a high water bill. So getting your system inspected can save a ton of water. Direct your spray on landscapes, not pavement, right? You don't want to be watering the street, your sidewalks, your fence if you can. And a fun tip is if you step in your lawn and the grass springs back, it actually doesn't need to be watered. So kind of a fun tip if you're ever out there and you're like, do I need to water it? It rained this week. That's actually a fun tip on a way to know if your grass needs some water. Leaving it long also helps by leaving your grass between 2 and 3 inches. It will actually promote drought resistant lawn. Honestly, by watering it every other day, as I think I say later, it makes the roots grow deeper, and you honestly don't need as much water. And then if your water begins to cool, turning off your sprinkler to prevent overwatering can lead, the overwatering leads to weed growth, disease, fungus, stormwater runoff, and all things that can, end up polluting our local waterways. So that's why it's important if you do have, pooling or something on the street to, stop that overwatering. And to my point before, too frequently watering your plants can actually result in shallow roots, which is worse for your grass and your bushes. And then last but not least, it's something actually that the Water Authority banned back in 2020. But if you have a geothermal system, now geothermal systems are great. NYSERDA, many levels of government, recommend and push people to get geothermal systems. But there's a very small section of people that have open loop geothermal on the Suffolk County Water Authority water that are just flushing tens of thousands of gallons of water every single day. And a little bit of a problem for our infrastructure this time of year. So, if you or anybody that you know is on open loop geothermal and is our customer, it's something to consider ways to use less power, maybe increasing your thermostat a little bit, or even looking into the future of, getting off of our water, going to a closed loop system, because geothermal on our water, although convenient for the customer, uses tens of thousands of gallons of water. Some of the people open loop geothermal use about 10 to 30 times the amount of water that a typical customer uses. So that was a lot of information. I saw some people taking pictures. And if you want any of this information after the fact, when you grab my card, feel free to email me and we'll get it to you as well. All right, moving right along. So changing your irrigation habits will make a huge difference, right? Like I stated before, 95% of our customers are residential. They use about 80% of the water. How can you save water? If you have an irrigation timer, like we stated before, switch to your odd even watering schedule. I know my irrigation controller in my house is probably between 5 and 10 years old. There is technically a change for odd even, but even if you have an irrigation system that's maybe older, you can't figure out how to do it. One, on our website, we actually have a breakdown of common irrigation controllers and how to change to odd even. And two, you can buy a new one and we will give you up to $150 off of your next water bill, depending on how much the cost of your irrigation timer was. There's actually some handouts that look like this when you walked in, and it talks about 8 different things that you can actually buy, keep your receipt, and then put in for a credit with Water Authority. Like I said, one of them is an irrigation timer. The second one is a rain sensor, which hooked up to your irrigation timer will turn your sprinklers off if it's rained recently, so you're not running a sprinkler during the rain. Leak detecting valves that you can install in your house, so in case there is a leak, it can turn off the water in your house so you don't have a flooded basement. EPA water saving shower heads, faucet aerators, pool covers, pressure regulators, and rain barrels. So there's a bunch of information and a lot of stuff that we are willing to basically give you money for to save some more water. And just to break down on even again, because sometimes we get this question constantly. If your house is number 40, you're going to water on even days, right? Because 0 is an even number, so you water on April 2nd, 4th, 6th. I'd ask you not to water in April, but that's a different story. If your house is 41, you would only water on the odd days like April 1st, 3rd, or 5th. And like we stated, consider getting a smart irrigation timer. A lot of those ones, like I said, have built-in Wi-Fi information. So if it says there's a 90% chance of rain tomorrow, and tomorrow's your odd day, it won't go off because it's going to rain. So we are really trying to encourage people to get those installed. And moving right along, the average customers who use these water saving devices, besides the money you get from us, will also save 10% on their water bill on top of whatever credit they also receive. And then water-wise, so besides our count credits that we just talked about, like I said, take a handout when you leave. We also do free in-home consultations where people like myself come to your house, we'll sit down with you and break down what you're using water for, because even though we know how much water you're using, considering we bill you for your water. We don't necessarily know what you're using it on, right? If we come there in the middle of the day and your irrigation is running, we know you're doing that. But we don't know if you're taking 7 showers a day or if there's 5 people living in the house or 2. So we'll talk through that. We can make some recommendations for how you can save more water, use it more efficiently. And we typically also talk about these credits and other things that you can do. And some other fun facts, we talked a little bit about this, 65 to 70% of the water pumped to customers is between May and September, mostly due to water irrigation. Average irrigation systems use between 10 and 15 gallons per minute, and that's per zone. So sit down and think, I know I have 5 zones in my house. Originally, I think I was running them 30 minutes each. I've now bumped it back to, I want to say 15, and basically cut my water bill in half. Did I have some brown spots and have to adjust? Sure. But at the end of the day, it's better for the environment, it's better to conserve water. So besides the irrigation systems, which are 10 to 15, brushing your teeth or washing dishes is only 2 to 3 minutes, 2 to 3 gallons per minute. And if you actually get some of those faucet aerators, they actually use closer to 1.75 gallons per minute. Have your irrigation system inspected. We mentioned this. And we also, like I stated, we'll give you a $75 credit for your swimming pool, because during the hot summer months, usually between 1,000 and 2,000 gallons of water evaporates off the top of your pool if it's not covered. So where does that water come to refill it? It comes from from the aquifer, from us. So covering your pool with a solar pool cover, 1 will warm your pool a little bit if you don't have a heater, and 2 save you from having to refill it. And as we keep trying to say, buy some of this new technology, since we're going to give you credit to do it. And then other than that, Our Water, Our Lives is actually a social media campaign that we started working on, I believe with, was it with LICAP, I want to say, Teddy? Yes, with LICAP, which is the Long Island Committee for Aquifer Protection. That's actually a joint collaboration between NASA and Suffolk County. It was actually adopted by the NASA and Suffolk legislatures, LICAP, in 2013. It's a committee that meets, I believe, quarterly. And Our Water, Our Lives is really like a social media and press machine, which has a lot of this information on their website at ourwaterourlives.com about more ways you can save water. Things people don't realize also, washing your car during the summer in your driveway might be fun, but a majority of the of the car washes that you actually go to recycle the water. So if it's a hot day, or you really want to get your car washed before July 4th weekend, we recommend going to a car wash versus doing it in your driveway, because they're recycling the water. So a lot of fun facts like that on Our Water, Our Lives website that we update constantly. And that is a lot of information. So questions about conservation or